Powered by Red Media in partnership with TSN, Season 5, Episode 13 of the Brain Dregs Hockey Podcast, presented by our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey. We're introducing the first release of the Canadian Club Invitation Series, CC 15-year-old Sherry Cask. Signature CC Classic, 12-year-old whiskey, finished with a secondary aging in Oloroso Sherry Cask. All the hallmarks of classic Canadian Club, with the added richness and sweetness of sherry. You okay, Ray Ferraro? You got a lot of stuff going on. I'm hearing rattling in my ears, and I'm trying to...
I do. Sorry to our great sponsors, Canadian Club. Like, I don't know if you've ever pulled on a hoodie, and it just doesn't feel right. Like, I had to check to see if it was inside out. I wasn't sure about that, because that's a possibility.
Done that.
Yeah. I think I'm ready to go. Yeah, sure.
Well, it's also 6:02 a.m. Pacific time as we record episode 13, which for you is on your timeline. Like, it doesn't matter to me. We can get going at 8 Eastern. That's fine. I've been up for an hour and a half. But you got stuff. You got the boys who are busy this morning, and Dad Ferraro is on the case.
I'm on the drive. I'm on the drive this morning. So while I'm home, I'd say the responsibilities don't get split 50-50. Because when I'm gone, of course, they don't get split anything other than 100 to Cammie and 0 to me. So I'm trying to stay in the game here. So,
but in fairness, you love it. I know you do. Deeply
I
invested.
hope every
distraction.
You know what, Drakes? You must think of this back, and I hope the people that got kids, like, the drive to the rink, or for us, it's for the field because our boys are soccer guys, but it's just like the drive is like there's nowhere for either of us to focus other than the drive and to talk and to catch up. It's I miss it when Landon and Matt moved out, my older guys, from that stage. I missed it, and I'm going to miss it now. I love it. I think it's awesome.
Okay, so your experience, given the path that you took to get to the NHL, the years that you played, I mean, most ex-NHLers are better sports parents because you realize how difficult it was to get to that highest level. And you realize that it's unlikely it's possible, you're going to give them every opportunity, whatever the sport is. I have two examples, which I'll share, that I'm still embarrassed by. And this was with Mason Drager in the car. One was, I ripped him a new one over a play he made or whatever, which was ridiculous. Like, the game is over. They probably won the game. It was so stupid on my part, right? So anyway, I learned from that. And then the second one was, he was in a bit of a scoring slump. He was a good goal scorer. He wasn't prolific, but good, in minor hockey. And I said, hey, Bauer's got this new stick out, and it was like $360 at the time. I'm like, next game you get a couple of goals, and he instantly just turned. He goes, Dad, you're going to bribe me to score? How is that helping? Like, that's not helping. And I was so embarrassed because he absolutely called me right out on it. Right? I'm like, I'm never doing that again. So,
well, I got one, Dregs. I've probably got many, but this one was, Riley was about 10, maybe 11, and he's playing soccer, and I think I understand soccer, but I don't know it, right? And so they're winning this game. It's late in the game, and I'm standing on the side by the offensive end. He's a offensive player, so I stand down by the end of the field where I can see the best. And soccer parents generally don't do a lot of yelling. It's not like hockey. It's not anywhere near as loud. So the ball comes in the corner. It's right in front of me, and Riley's like maybe 15 yards away, and I yell at him, Riley, hunt it. And he doesn't look up. He doesn't, he just does his thing, and he doesn't do what I think is right, which is run to the ball and pressure. And so they win the game or whatever. We're in the car on the way home. He goes, hey, Dad, he's 10, right? He goes, Dad, I heard you yell there, like, for me to hunt the ball, but, like, if I hunt it and I don't get it and they pass it, across the field, now the other side of the field's wide open. My job's to keep the ball in that corner. And I was like, you know what I'm going to do, Rye? I'm going to shut up and just watch the games from now on. Because it's clear I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. And how many times or you in a rink and you hear a parent yell and you're like, not only is it useless because he can't hear you in time anyway, but oftentimes it's the wrong thing.
100%.
Just watch. Just watch. Like, enjoy it, because pretty soon they're not going to, like, seriously, pretty soon they're not going to play.
No, exactly.
Right? It's going to be, they're going to be too old, or they're going to go on to something else. So just enjoy it. It's crazy, but it's hard to do.
You know what's a better investment? And how about this segue? A smile cookie. Rather than beak your kids out there, run them to Tim Hortons and get them a smile cookie. Because, Ray, as we know, and this is always one of my favorite times of year, I don't do it as much as I used to because, hey, getting older, trying to watch what I eat, all of those kinds of, but normally I do the Tim Hortons run and I get my medium coffee with milk. And when the Tim Hortons smile cookie campaign is on, that's exactly what I do. And it's coming up November 13th to the 19th. So you buy one of these delicious smile cookies, only $1.50, $1.50. I always have a stash of like toonies in my little cup holder beside.
Nice.
So I'm ready for it. 100% of the proceeds go to support local charities. They've been doing this for more than 25 years now.
Awesome.
So we've come to know and love Tim Hortons smile cookies. And obviously you can only get them at Tim's, which leads us to our Tim Hortons headlines. And, one of the top stories in Canada, at least, and around the National Hockey League, is the start of the Vancouver Canucks. And we're going to get to the Canucks shortly. They pick up a win over the Edmonton Oilers last night. And the temperature in Edmonton, as our fearless leader, Ryan Rishaug, will attest to, is now white hot. Like it was red hot. That was a tipping point type of opportunity game for the Oilers. They lose. So a top Stanley Cup contender now sits 31st in the league, 18 points back of Vegas, 14 back of Vancouver in the Pacific.
That's just unfathomable.
It's bizarre. So the broad question here, we know they're 11 games in. We know they're not out of it. But what's the fix? If you're Kenny Holland or you're Jeff Jackson or you're Daryl Cates, how do you fix it?
Well, the first step, I think, and it's the hardest one, is to take a half a step back and not to deal with this or a possible solution with emotion, because that never works. It's like and I think that there's a view that, like a decision is made today based on last night, or like this is a decision. Whatever they're going to do is going to be a culmination of a month of headache that they've had. What's crazy, Dregs, is when we did our preview show, and we're picking Stanley Cup contenders, which is now 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Edmonton is one of our picks.
Yeah.
Right? So if you loved the team then, in 6 weeks, do you hate it now?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot to not like right now with the Oilers. I'll give you, like, it's pretty easy to focus on McDavid and Draisaitl because they're McDavid and Draisaitl.
Right.
Right? Like they need to be more prolific. It doesn't strike me that McDavid would be 100% healthy right now.
Right. Yeah.
That it just doesn't look quite the same. They come out of the gate last night. The shots are 19-3. They're down 2-1. Right. Yeah. Like, so at that point, that frustration is going to bubble up inside them, because it's not good enough to say, oh yeah, but that was a good period.
Yeah.
And because it's just not. And so then they're down 3-1. So we'll start with McDavid and Draisaitl. They're on, like, Draisaitl scored last night. McDavid didn't again. If they don't score, they're in trouble, right? Like they're in trouble. But last night, like, I would say they've got 5 high-end forwards. Last night, I didn't notice Kane, Hyman, or Nugent Hopkins at all. Like, not at all.
Positively or negatively, like non-existent.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Just in a jersey. So there's your top 5 forwards. Look at the bottom end of their lineup. not only are they not prolific, they have zero. They have no goals. They're tied with me and you. If you look at the bottom of their roster. Now, here's the problem when guys have 8 to 12 goals in a season. That means they're going to score once every 10 games or so. The chances of them all getting 0 at the same time is crazy, except that's what they got. Do you know Sam Gagner has as many even strength goals as Draisaitl and McDavid combined?
Yeah, I saw that.
Like, so right across the board offensively, it's a debacle. It's a disaster. Look at they cannot keep the puck out of their net. Like, Evan Bouchard has had a tough start, really tough start. He made a couple of plays last night that you can't really look past. Darnell Nurse is running all over the place, trying to do 3 guys' jobs. That's not working. The problem is the harder you try, the worse it gets.
Yeah.
But your question was, what do you do next? There are no trades, really. Like, what trades do you make? They have no cap space, so there's no in and out of the lineup that the coaches could use. Like, pretty quickly you get to, do you have to make a coaching change to change the air?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm not advocating for anybody to lose their job, but I just don't see what the next step is.
Yeah. Then
because if you could make a trade, you'd go ahead and make a trade before you get to the coach.
For sure you would.
But how are you going to do that? The other thing is, you don't need to have the best goaltending. You cannot have the worst.
No.
Their goaltending is so bad right now. Last night, Demko's putting on a show at the other end of the ice. Vancouver comes down the ice, puck bounces off Desharnais, it's in the net. Mm-hmm. Next shot goes literally right through him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they need that save. Yeah. Now, in the second period, I thought Skinner was great. But by then, you're chasing the game again.
Yeah. 4 coaches.
So, I mean, I don't think there's I don't think there's a trade to be had to help them, because I just don't think it's out there.
And I mean, Kenny Holland well. And it comes with the territory and with the business, no doubt. He's got senior management ownership breathing down his neck. No question about that. Of course he does. Yeah. Everybody's feeling that level of pressure. Kenny is not a general manager given his years of experience, even though he had to do it in Edmonton, where he likes to make that coaching change in season, right? He's a pretty loyal dude. He does not want to do that. 4 coaches in 9 years. I mean, how much of that then starts to pile on the Draisaitl's, the McDavids, the leaders of the Oilers? This can't necessarily just be about Jay Woodcroft not being able to get the group going, but it could be the only thing you've got left.
Yeah. Did you get to the end of the game, or did it get too late?
I didn't get to the end of the game.
Okay. Well, in the third period, they became totally unhinged.
Yeah, I read that. I saw that. Yeah.
Oh my! So you say how much comes to them? So here's the thing: when you're a great player like they are, mm-hmm. everything that you do resonates through your locker room like a sledgehammer. So if they're wearing this stress and this frustration so obviously, it affects everybody else. They probably don't even realize it because they're just themselves, right? Yeah. Yeah. But when you play with great players, you often feel like you disappoint them. Like, if you throw a pass and it gets in their feet, you feel it.
Yeah.
If they throw a pass in your feet, they don't feel it. They're pissed at themselves, like they're mad at themselves.
Yeah.
But they just go and fix it. The rest of the roster can't think like that and doesn't think like that. So when they're so obviously frustrated, it's because they can't change it right now. And it's like throwing a rock in the lake. Mm-hmm. The ripples just start to go across the locker room. And it's hard to put it all on those guys, because that is totally wrong. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it sits at their feet because they're of the few players in the league that can absolutely change the way something happens in their locker room. And they just don't have it right now. I mean, like, so you're down, I think it's 4-2 at the time. McDavid takes a minor penalty in the scrum. Draisaitl takes a misconduct. Well, there you go, finished.
Yeah.
And then 8 seconds after McDavid gets a penalty, it's 5-2. Mm-hmm. Good night.
Yeah.
And so they're in a bad spot. And again, I get back to it because everybody, like literally everyone will be talking about the next move, what it is. And I mean, there's no defenseman to bring in. There's no forwards to jumble around or move in and out of the lineup. Hyman, Nugent-Hopkins, Kane, Draisaitl, McDavid up front, they have to be able to pull this train. And if they can't, they're in enormous trouble. On the blue line, I don't really know. I don't think Bouchard reads the play well when he struggles. I think he just panics and almost freezes when he's out there. And that's where he's at. Nurse, as I said earlier, feels like he's trying to do 3 guys' jobs, and that never works. And the goalies, they can't stop anything right now. So it's whack-a-mole there. Fix one thing, something else pops up, and maybe the move they don't want to make is the only one they've got.
Well, undoubtedly, we'll be talking about the Edmonton Oilers, good, bad, or otherwise, in episode 14 later this week. Let's shift to something far more positive, and the fact that the Vancouver Canucks are on a heater, right? I mean, we've invested 7 minutes here talking about the Edmonton Oilers' foibles, but
good word.
Vancouver is just buzzing right now, and you alluded to it in your assessment and your analysis of what's going on with Edmonton. The goaltending, starting with Thatcher Demko, is stellar for the Vancouver Canucks, and it's been that way from pretty much game one. And the confidence in front of the goaltender is just continuing to build.
Well, so, I mean, last night, and as we're talking here, a great mirror image of what goaltending is. And so if you don't have the best guy, you've got to have adequate goaltending so your team doesn't lose faith in the way they play and the guy in the net. So in Vancouver, last year things go sideways. Demko's hurt. It's just not, the whole year became a write-off until Tocchet came in and they started to try to put together a more systematic way to do things. Well, that system helps when Demko comes back too, right?
Yeah.
So I think Demko is one of the best 5 or 6 guys in the league. I cannot think of 6 guys I'd take in front of him. The other night, on Saturday night, I went to the game in Vancouver. I watched 2 of the 3 U.S. Olympic team goalies play for 2026 in Demko and Jake Ottinger. It like watching them at either end of the ice was like, oh my God, these guys are so good.
Yeah.
I'll take the 3 Russian guys, Vasilevsky, Sorokin, and Shesterkin, and put them in that same mix. But who else would you want?
No.
I mean, Demko has been brilliant. And last night, I thought the Vancouver's real challenge was going to be in the first 10 minutes. Like reverse of usual, like you always say on the road, hey, be ready for this team. They come out flying. I thought Vancouver had to be prepared for Edmonton with all the crap going on there, that they were going to come out fast. I don't know that Vancouver reacted very quickly in the first 10 minutes. And Demko gave them a chance to get their feet on the ground.
Yeah.
The shots were 19-3, and I think at the end of the day, they were pretty much Vancouver outshot them the rest of the night. But they weren't down 2-0. The other thing that happens is you got your goalie doing that, but they look so confident. They look way more aggressive than as a team. The top end of their lineup, Dregs, has been phenomenal. amazing. Quinn Hughes is off to, he's the best defenseman in the league right now. Elias Pettersson he's looking like somebody that would be an MVP type candidate at this point. JT Miller, like his whatever they've come to realize about each other, Rick Tocchet and JT Miller have found a way. And I'm telling you, I'm so impressed with how he's played. He would be the type of guy you'd really hate to play against.
Yeah.
Because he's big, he's kind of mean, he skates well.
Yeah.
And so everywhere you turn around, he's kind of there to punch you in the nose. It's hard to play like that. And, Brock Besser's had a tough couple of years. He's got 10 goals. Like, it's across the board. Now their depth guys are pitching in. The guy that's been a lightning rod out here is Tyler Myers. He's been great.
Wow.
The last half dozen games. So him and Ian Cole have helped. And Carson Soucy, they've changed their defense. They've changed their system. Like, it's been surprising and unbelievably satisfying for their team to play like they have early in the year.
Rick Tocchet, accepted a formidable challenge, right? I mean, he's comfortable in studio at TNT. He's making good money, wanted to get back into coaching in his blood. The bug was still very much there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there are a number of things that he wants to change or incorporate, even though it doesn't look that way right now. Like all coaches, players, you're looking at the end of the year, you're looking at the playoffs. But how much, and you kind of hinted at it in terms of the relationship that's obviously there with an individual player in JT Miller, but how much credit goes to the job that Tocchet is doing, and then by extension, the coaching staff and maybe management on top of that?
Well, it's really imperative that the management and the coach see things the same way. And so the players, they had a 2.5 month training camp last year.
Yeah.
When Tocchet came in. And they changed their defensive system, him and Adam Foote and Sergei Gonchar. And Mike Yo's the coach, that deals more with the forwards, but it was the defensive thing that they changed.
Yeah.
And that took quite some time. But they had a 2.5 month camp. But what they also did was they were able to identify, what do they want to do? Like, what do we need? And so the management and the coach become on the same page there. And so you end up, they had Carson Soucy, they had Teddy Bluger, who hasn't even played this year. They had Pius Suter, Carson Soucy. They've Ian Cole, sorry. So they added penalty killers. They added stiffness to their game. They added size and depth to their blue line. And so everything that they've done has really kind of worked. Now, I know we're going to get to Toronto in a minute, but everything that Toronto's done with their newcomers hasn't worked.
No.
In Vancouver, the pieces they brought in have worked. And so part of the job with the new, now they're in year 3 here, 2.5, is with the management team is to set a course about how they want to go forward.
Yeah.
And that takes time. And they feel, or it looks like, that they're kind of on the same page. Now, they're going to hit a rut somewhere. Of course they are. Nobody goes through and sails along for months and months and months. But here's the thing, Drake. You throw these points in the bank now, it just makes everything else just this much, just a little bit more relaxed. If you hit a 3-game skid, you can take a breath because you've got points in the bank.
Yeah.
And they have not had that luxury for a long time.
Why don't let's save Toronto for later in the week, and not just because they won, unless you've got a quick thought. I mean,
Austin Matthews is really good. There's my quick thought.
Well, he certainly jump-started that comeback win, and John Cooper's likely scratching his head tonight, going, what happened there?
Well, I think what he does when he scratches his head, as much as the Leaf Lightning games are pretty wild. he probably looks back and goes, geez, I miss old number 88 back there.
Yeah, for sure.
Like no matter what the game went, there's probably a couple of saves made somewhere in there by the big boy.
Yeah.
And, again, you don't need to have the best goaltending, but when you have the best and he's not there, you're going to notice it.
Well, and goaltending is a big story in Toronto, right? Samsonov gets pulled again. Joe Woll comes in. He was excellent in relief. But I want to push this a little bit to later in the week because they've got a couple of challenges ahead. One of them being Ottawa. And so Ottawa and Columbus is how I want to wrap up headlines. Coaches feel it all the time. We started headlines by talking about Jay Woodcroft and the possibility, if not likelihood, this guy's going to get gonged in Edmonton as head coach there. How unnerving does it have to be standing on a bench?
Oh, I can't even imagine, Drake.
And it was deafening.
Are you serious?
Fire DJ. Fire. And I'm sorry, but did we honestly think that Ottawa should be better than what they are right now? That's been acknowledged by the coach and everyone there. But I just wish the fan base there would kind of just pay attention to where this team is. We all think they're going to be really good, don't we? Maybe if contending this year for a playoff spot, maybe.
But Dregs, so there was so much positivity coming out of the summer. I always get a little nervous about it when you hear a team won the summer.
Yeah, too much too soon. Yeah.
It's like they haven't even got out of the gate yet.
Yeah.
And then so that gave me a little bit of pause, right? The second part of it is they get out, they got new goalies, they're excited about Korpisalo and Forsberg's healthy, and they've got those young guys that really all kind of broke out in the last year and a bit, and it rarely goes as smoothly as that.
Yeah.
It just, I don't know why, it just since forever it's always been like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then they get 3 defensemen hurt. It's not the best defensive team to start with, and then they get 3D hurt. Going to be really tough to overcome that. And the fact is they can't.
Yeah.
And then you've got now, Stützle's frustrated and not scoring. And, as one example, Batherson's been in and out a little bit. So now you have young guys that aren't familiar with dealing with NHL expectation. And every time you turn around, you're like, oh my God, the team coming in here next is good.
Yeah.
Man, these guys are good too. And pretty soon you're chasing everything.
Yeah.
They can't stop the bleeding there in Ottawa right now. And for DJ Smith back there, I'm sure he feels like, he's punching the wind a little bit. How do you make it stop?
Mm-hmm.
And, the other night, Tampa just ran him out of the building. I think it ended up 6-4, but that was long gone, long before that.
Yeah.
And so they're in a tough spot too, because they're losing touch a little bit with the group in front of them. And you just, like I said earlier with Vancouver, you just don't want to get chasing. You just cannot make up the points. There's too many obstacles in front of you.
All right, kind of a theme of coaching here in the Tim Hortons headlines, and we'll wrap with this. So Johnny Gaudreau, slow start, no question about that. Benched on Saturday for the last 16 minutes of a 2-1 loss to the Capitals, right? So I get the messaging. It's the same for your 12 forward as it is for your top forward. In theory, that computes in theory, but do you not find another way, Ray, if you're Pascal Vincent? You've got a TV timeouts, rip him a new one on the bench so that everybody can hear that you're unhappy with his play. Light a fire under him. Do what you have to do to coach him up. Instead, you park him for the rest of the game. I mean, Johnny Hockey is capable of scoring, 2 goals in 10 seconds? The win matters more than setting the example, in my opinion, of Johnny Gaudreau. Fair or unfair?
Well, I mean, it's eye-opening to see, for sure. So thanks very much on my first NHL coaching job that I get the job 2 days before training camp.
Yeah.
Right. So you're an assistant coach now. You're the head coach. You want to establish your ways and practices, right? Like how you want things done. But the season's not waiting. The season's starting. So they're behind anyway. Like I'll compare it out to Anaheim because I think they're very similar. Greg Cronin goes in there, as a first-time head coach. He's got the entire summer, plus he's got the entire training camp to kick people in the tail, and that's not even fair. But like to say, hey, look, this is what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And so, this is my standard, and since I'm standing back here in a suit, this is the standard for our team.
Mm-hmm.
And Trevor Zegras was out of camp. He came in, things weren't going very well, and Zegras sat.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is when you do this with an older player, you better be real sure that he's going to respond to it.
Yeah.
And the younger guy most likely is going to. The older guy is going to push back most often. So now he benches him for whatever it was, 15, 16 minutes. They go to Florida. They get outshot 22-3 to start the period, and Goudreau's -2.
Mm-hmm.
Oops.
Mm.
Like now you're climbing uphill just with that one player.
Yeah.
Let alone trying to settle the team down. And I know they came back and worked real hard and got themselves back in that game, but it's a real dangerous precedent, except there's no other hammer for the coach. There was nothing else. Yeah. It's ice time. And he's trying to establish himself, Vincent is. And that's like I said, you better be sure about your relationship with the player. It's different than it was years ago where they just benched you and didn't even talk to you. It can't be like that anymore. And I'm not saying it is, but it just can't be like that anymore.
Well, and it makes sense. Pascal would have the support of Jarmo Kekalainen, as general manager, given the fact that Vincent replaced Mike Babcock, who was hired by Jarmo. Right. Jarmo hired John Tortorella. I mean, Jarmo has a history of wanting that kind of hard-nosed coach. So
right, but that's fine to have the hard-nosed coach, but the player has to be able to see. I think this is really important. The player's got to be able to see where the light is. Otherwise, like you can't walk down a dark tunnel and just keep walking and going, oh, this is going to be great. Yeah. Right? You need to see where the light is. And I don't know if they see that in Columbus right now, but I mean, they were this close to getting out of that with 2 points. And then Provorov turned the puck over, late in the game. It ends up in the net and they go to overtime and lose. So like they showed lots after being down. Like that looked like it was going to be 7-0. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden they're in overtime. They have a chance to win. Yeah. So credit to those guys for maybe they do see the light.
Introducing Tim's new Holiday Smile Cookie. 100% of proceeds support local charities, community groups, and Tim's campers in your neighborhood. Buy a Holiday Smile Cookie at Tim's to give back to your community.
All right, our interviews on Ray and Riggs this season brought to us by Canadian Club Whiskey. We're introducing the first release of the Canadian Club Invitation Series, CC 15-year-old Sherry Cask. And we'll have one of our infamous guests join us at some point.
Yeah, we'll get on it, Dregs.
Get on it. Well, lots of irons in the fire. Let's just leave it at that. It's going to be spectacular one way or another in episode 14. A couple of questions. Ask Ray and Riggs anything. You can send your questions to us on our socials, Twitter, Instagram, at Ray and Riggs, or on the website, rayandriggs.com. All right, Craig Birch, Raymond, is asking, could Toronto offer William Nylander a league minimum 1-year deal for next season? Then in July, offer him an 8-year deal starting the following season, utilizing the Tavares money available from 2025. Now he says, love the podcast and would also love to hear more stories from Sean Podine. Like that's an interesting cross-section of questions. Yeah. I mean, who doesn't love the Sean Podine stories? Come on.
They are endless, and they're from 20 years ago, and they're still as unique as anyone you would come across. And just One sample, this was a guy in the American League. They lived close to the rink. They bought a lousy car and the transmission went out of it. It would only go in reverse. So they drove to practice in reverse.
Why wouldn't you?
Parked, and then turned around and drove it back in reverse back home. Must be excellent getting a boat in the water, right? But as far as the Leafs, so if they signed him to a 1-year minimum, that contract wouldn't start until July.
Yeah.
And then you wouldn't be able to sign the extension until January.
Right.
Why would Nylander do that?
He wouldn't do it.
Right. Like you put yourself out.
And there's no cap savings because he's not signing a 1-year deal at $5 million. You know,
he's not. Yes. Yeah. No, that's not gonna. It's just not gonna happen. And the reason is, like, honestly, is you can say, oh, well, you would do it knowing in good faith you would have that deal done in January. Yeah. So what happens if you break your ankle in November? They're going to say, oh, don't worry about it. We'll still give you the $90 million.
Yeah.
No chance.
No chance.
Yeah. It just, you're in a tough spot. Yeah. You are, because the guy is playing the best hockey that I've ever seen him play. And you want to get him signed. It's going to cost you.
Big. All right, Craig, thank you for that. One more. Paul Marcus. Now, Paul is a beer league hockey player.
Sure.
Millions of them around North America. Says, I've been fortunate to have played a lot of beer league with a number of former NHL players, which also isn't uncommon, depending on the level of beer league you play. And I'm paraphrasing now, but he says the common thread in these players' personalities is the amazing ability to tell funny stories. And I think that would be fair, because most of you, as ex-NHL players, you know, you went through tough, sometimes hard, difficult situations, but you also had good times, and you were surrounded by, you know, just characters, you know, especially in the era that you played in. So Paul is asking, Ray, who's the funniest storyteller that you've come across?
Oh. Well, I will say, because his name got brought up this week, I was in Toronto on Tuesday, and LA was there. The Kings were there. And somebody mentioned, like, we have a co-acquaintance that we didn't know that it was a co-acquaintance, and it's Gary Galley. I've never been around anyone that tells a story like Gary. And the reason is because as he's telling the story, he uses sound effects. Honestly, we should get him on and just tell him a couple of stories, get him to tell a couple stories. Like this one I have in particular, and he's talking about driving this one night and it's in the rain. And I forget the rest of the story, except he's like, so I'm driving down, the rain's pouring down, I got the wipers on, like he does this. And it goes through the whole story. You don't even know if you're laughing at the story or the sound effects.
That's good.
And he is, I would say, he's as good a storyteller as there is. At times they were maybe a little similar. They could get a little long because he's got to fit the sound effects into the thing. But he's hilarious.
That's fantastic. All right, Paul.
And he's also got. Can I give you his nickname? Do we have time for that?
Gary Galley's nickname?
Well, yeah. Like when we were in Los Angeles, we're in LA, and he came to the team, and he doesn't have a nickname, and they used to call him Ga, and So Dougie Smolik, one of the most interesting characters that I ever played with. We're trying to come up with a nickname. We're in Boston one night, and or afternoon game, and we're getting our lunch handed to us. And Gary used to wear a visor, but the visor was really close to his face. And so they're sitting on the bench, and Smolik looks at him and goes, "I got your nickname." And he's like, "Well, what is it?" And he goes, "I'm going to call you Sausage." And he's like, "What?" And so he goes, "Yeah, you're like a sausage. Your equipment's so tight. Your visor's so tight. If you sweat, I'm worried you're going to start to drown." I don't know how he came up with this, but we started calling him Sausage.
Come on.
For the rest of the year, we called him Sausage. And it all came from Zmolik somehow looking at him and going, geez, this guy's equipment fits him like a sausage casing. And so I think but that's Gary and Zmolik. And it was just like, anyway. So when I see him, like when
Sausage.
I saw, Rob Blake and I saw Blakey in LA and we end up talking about sauce. and and how he's doing, and so it's one of the great nicknames that I've come across.
Well, there you go, Paul. Thanks for the question. See, it all emanates from beer league hockey, right? The storytellers. Yes. So there you go. Good question on Ask Ray and Dregs anything. All right, you want the home front, I guess, for the rest of the week?
No,
this week, right?
This is my first week, my first Vancouver Canuck game. So
very good.
I am headed to Ottawa tomorrow.
Okay.
In Ottawa Thursday, no game Saturday because that's on hockey night, the Leafs and the Canucks.
Yeah.
And then Sunday, I'm in Montreal. So Ottawa and Montreal this week for me. And I haven't been in either place in a long time. So looking forward to getting there. And the Bell Center has long been one of my favorites.
Great. Yeah.
Second place to the old Forum. The Forum was the greatest of the old arenas, but the Bell Center, I'm looking forward to it.
All right, good stuff, man. Well, we know.
How about you? What do you got?
It's the normal busy again this week, which is fine. We've got our insider tradings, we've got all the coverage on Sports Center, but down at the building at the rink this week for the Hall of Fame game on Friday. So.
That's always fun.
Game. Yeah, that's always fun. And more interesting, of course, depending on how things go the rest of the week leading into that game for the Leafies, but no shortage of storylines. So, we'll connect again later this week as we always do.
Well, enjoy it. And you will see one of my old teammates at the Hall of Fame, the great Pierre Turgeon. And one of the nicest people you'll ever come across. So enjoy it, Dregs. Have a great week. And everyone, we'll talk to you later in the week.
You bet. Thank you to our sponsors, Ray, who continue to support Ray and Dregs and make our podcast possible. Our title sponsor, Canadian Club Whiskey, and of course, Tim Hortons. And thank you to you for listening, rating, sharing the podcast, and for following us on the Ray and Dregs YouTube channel. Until next time, stay safe, everybody.